Question number 10 of the ID password exam from PhilNITS. In this question, we are being asked which of the following is an appropriate description concerning CPU performance. This question isn't really too difficult. What we need to do is to read all of the choices and all of the statements that they have here and find out which one is the appropriate description. In this case too, when we read through the list of choices, we'll find that the incorrect choices would be saying something that is the opposite of the correct answer. So if we go first with the first choice here in letter A, we find that we're comparing two CPUs. The first one is a 64-bit CPU, and the second one is a 32-bit CPU. The statement is saying that it's much better to have a 30-bit CPU to process a longer set of data at one time. But we know that that's incorrect because what you want to have is a 64-bit CPU, which is much bigger and should be able to process a longer set of data. So we put here an X mark to say that this is incorrect. For letter B, we have something about the cache memory, and it's saying that the less the capacity of the cache memory, the faster the processing speed. But we know that what you want is to have more capacity for cache memory. Cache memory is something that we use whenever you go visit a website using your browser, and it's one way to make things much faster to load, because for all the images maybe that you visit in this website often, and maybe the logo or whatever template that they're using that uses some kind of set of images, it puts those images in the cache memory so that whenever you go visit that website again, it'll just simply get those images in memory, and instead of computing all those images from zero and then loading it up. So if you have them in file and in your memory, it'll be much faster. The other thing too that I'd like to point out is this part about cache memory in the CPU seems to be a bit ambiguous. I think the cache memory can work with the CPU, but it's not supposed to be inside the CPU, because we know that the CPU is the processor. Maybe there will be a future design where they put them together, kind of like one of those graphic cards, because the graphic card would have a processor and a memory inside one card. But in this case, I think the cache memory is not supposed to be inside the CPU. Okay, so we put here an X mark. For the next choice, let's go with letter D, because I know the letter D is the incorrect choice, and we'll see why. A dual core CPU, it says, can perform a greater number of processes simultaneously than a quad core CPU can. So we're comparing a dual core CPU with a quad core CPU, and we know that a dual core CPU is supposed to perform a lesser number than a quad core, because a quad core is supposed to have more cores, right? Therefore, if you do not understand what a dual means and a quad means, then that could be a reason why you won't be able to answer this question well. But if you know that a dual would be something related to the number 2, and a quad would be something related to number 4, then you know that the quad there, would have a much better performance when processing a greater number because it can do more. Okay, so we put here an X mark, and for the last choice, letter C, says that the CPU of a given architecture, its processing speed can be raised by increasing the clock frequency. We know that this can be done if you go to the BIOS, for example, of your computer, and you set the clock frequency to be overclockable, or you set it to be at a much higher frequency. And I think there are people who mainly do that so that they can play the games with a lot of the 3D graphics. And I think usually too, if you don't want to mess around with your clock frequency, because maybe you think that it'll heat up your computer much faster, which is actually quite possible. Um, you can actually just buy um, another processor, and it could be the graphics card to dedicate to be dedicated to your computer game, which uses a lot of the 3D computations. Usually, computing things in 3D, um, they tend to be quite intensive in terms of the processing, because you have to compute not only with the x and y coordinates, you have to go and add another, which is the z coordinate. So it at times can create a lot of the problems you might have with things not loading as fast as they should. So um, people have invented the 3D cards to help you and do just that. Okay, so again, for this question, the correct answer is the letter C.